Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a classic oversized v-neck sweater. This one felt like a throwback. I was going for a 90s hip-hop vibe, so oversized everything was a must. We worked on a new collar I wanted to try, and we got to use the classic herringbone stitch, so what's not to love? Speaking of, if you're looking for stylish crochet designs to love, you're in the right place. We've got hundreds of modern crochet designs with many more coming, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work. I used a total of 820 grams of yarn. That's 1,800 yards if you're stateside, and the individual measurements will be on the screen. As for tools, a 5 and 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us any spring makes you're excited for. For me, I'm not fully sure yet, but a dress or two is definitely on the agenda. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, double crochet, and herringbone. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting the sweater started, we are all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're going to grab our 5mm hook, and we're all going to start by making an odd number chain that reaches from the base of our neck across our chest to the other side of the base of our neck. Right before I tell you guys my measurement and the amount of chains that I made, I'm going to show you guys a really neat trick that I learned to make sure that our chain doesn't twist. So let's all start by making a chain of 5. Now that we have our chain, we're going to pull some slack and then pull our hook out. Next, we're going to insert our hook into that very first chain that we made, and then reinsert our slack loop onto our hook and pull. And then from here, we're going to continue on with our chain, leaving this first chain within the back, so we're not going to be working into that chain. And the total measurement that I need is going to be a total of 6 inches or 15 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 25. So now that I have my chain, we're going to do 1 extra chain, and then we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into there. That's going to be our shoulder stitch marker stitch. And now that our stitch marker is into place, we're going to be making another odd number chain that reaches from the base of our neck down to the depth where we want the collar to be. Now I've already measured mine out, and I need another 6 inches or 15 centimeters, so I'm just going to make another chain of 25. And now that I have that chain, I'm going to make another chain and then insert my second colored stitch marker stitch into that extra chain that we just made, and that is going to be the depth of our v-neck. And then from here, all we're going to do is make another chain for the same amount of chains that we just made, working our way back up to the base of our neck. So since I just made a chain of 25, I'm going to make another chain of 25. And now that I've made that chain, just like how we did the other sides, we're going to make an extra chain and then insert our same stitch marker color for our shoulder. And then from here, all we're going to do is pull that first loop underneath the second loop. And now our base chain is all finished up, and we should have something that looks a little like this. And now that our chain is all finished up, what we're going to do is a half double crochet row. But into each of our stitch marker stitches, we're going to be doing an increase of 3. So making sure that we're working across the back of our collar over to our first shoulder portion, we're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every chain. So start with a chain 2. Now for this first half double crochet, we want to make sure that we aren't skipping that first chain that we made since we did slip stitch into there. So all we're going to do is yarn over and then insert our hook into that first chain with a half double crochet. There's my first. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, so let's do another half double crochet together. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into my following chain, pull through. Once we have those 3 loops on our hook, just yarn over and pull through all 3. And continue to put 1 half double crochet into every chain until we reach our stitch marker. Alright, so I've made my way down to my first stitch marker, and then into that chain that we have, we're going to be doing an increase of 3 half double crochets. So start by taking out this stitch marker, but don't put it too far because we're going to need to reinsert it. And how we're going to do our increase is start with the yarn over, insert your hook into that following chain with 1 half double, into that same chain with a second half double, and then into that same chain with a third half double crochet. Now once we have our increase, we're going to reinsert our stitch marker into that second stitch that we made so we know which one is the middle. So reinsert your stitch marker into there, and we're going to be doing the same thing for all of our stitch marker stitches. So from here, put 1 half double crochet into every chain. When we reach our following stitch marker stitch, which should be the point of our V-neck, we're going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets while inserting our stitch marker into that middle stitch. And then we're going to put 1 half double crochet into every stitch, doing another increase of 3 into this last stitch marker stitch, while reinserting our stitch marker into that middle stitch just once more, and I will meet you back to show you how we are going to connect this row together. Alright, so we are back and we have made our way all the way around with our half double crochet row with our increase of 3 half double crochets into each of our stitch marker chains. Now from here, I'm going to show you guys how we're going to close off this row. So the first thing we're going to want to do is find that chain 2 that we made when we started off this row, and then we're going to slip stitch into that second chain. So here's my first, here's my second. All I'm going to do is insert my hook into there, yarn over and pull through. And now our row 1 is complete and we can get started on our ribbing. So what we're going to do from here is chain 2 to get the height that we need. This doesn't count as a stitch. And then from here we're going to alternate between a front post double crochet and a half double crochet, making our way all the way down until we reach our next stitch marker. So how we're going to do our first stitch is we're going to start with a front post double crochet. We're all going to yarn over once, preparing for it, and then we're going to find our first half double crochet from our previous row and double checking and making sure that we're working across the back portion first. And then we're going to insert our hook underneath the body of that half double crochet. Make sure that we're not working into that chain 2 from our previous row, because remember that doesn't count as a stitch. So underneath that first half double crochet, we're going to insert our hook underneath, yarn over, pull through. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, just yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, and that is our first front post double crochet. Now our following stitch is going to be a half double crochet. So start with the yarn over, skipping 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet counts as this first stitch. We're going to insert our hook into that next stitch with a half double. Now all together we should have 1 front post double crochet and a half double crochet all finished up. Let's do another set together. Now we're going to start with the yarn over, preparing for a front post double crochet again. We're going to skip that following stitch from our previous row because this half double crochet counts as this one right here, and then we're going to work underneath that following half double crochet. So we're going to bring our hook down towards us, and then underneath the body of that next half double crochet we're going to bring our hook underneath and then through the other side. And all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then a half double crochet into the following stitch. So yarn over, make sure that we are skipping 1 stitch from our previous row, and then into that following stitch, a half double crochet. Now all together we should have 2 sets all finished up. Let's just do 1 more as a quick refresher. We're going to yarn over, skip the following half double crochet because this stitch counts as this one, and then underneath the body of that following half double crochet, we're going to pull through, pull through two with our front post double, and then yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet, skip the following stitch, and then into the stitch right after that from our previous row, 1 half double crochet. And that's it. We're just going to continue to alternate between a front post double crochet and a half double crochet, making our way all the way down until we reach our next stitch marker, and I will meet you guys back right after we do a front post double crochet. Alright, so I'm back and I made my way all the way down to my first stitch marker stitch. Now into that following stitch, we're going to need to do an increase of 3 stitches. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, if we're looking at our previous row, we should have 1, 2 stitches, and then our stitch marker stitch. That first stitch that we have counts as our last front post double crochet that we did, and then into the stitch that we have that's right before a stitch marker, that's going to be the stitch that we do our increase in. So into here, it's going to be a half double crochet, a front post double crochet, and then 1 more half double crochet into there. So let's get that started. The first half double crochet is going to be done the same exact way that we've been doing all the other ones. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to skip 1 stitch from our previous row, and then into the stitch right after that, insert with a half double crochet. That should be the stitch right before a stitch marker. And now we need to do a front post double crochet, which is going to be the following stitch. So the stitch right after our last front post double crochet. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook underneath that stitch, pull through 2, pull through 2. This is what we should have so far, and then 1 more half double crochet into that same stitch right before our stitch marker. So yarn over, into that stitch once more, insert your hook, pull through all 3. And that is how we do our increase for this section. Now right after that, it's going to be our middle stitch that we have that we insert our stitch marker into. That's always going to be a front post double crochet. So yarn over once, and then into that following stitch, we're going to do a front post double crochet. Now go ahead and take out your stitch marker and then insert it into the top of that stitch that we just made. And then on the other side of our middle stitch, we're going to be doing another increase. So that's going to start with a half double crochet. We're going to skip 1 stitch from our previous row because this front post double crochet, or our middle stitch that we did, counts as this stitch, and then into the following, a half double crochet, a front post double crochet, and then another half double crochet. So starting with the yarn over, into that following stitch that we have that's right after our middle stitch, we're going to do a front post double, and then we're going to close off this increase with a half double crochet into the same stitch that our last half double crochet was into. So yarn over, into that same stitch, we're going to insert our hook. From there, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now all together we should have our increase, our middle stitch, and then our increase, and then from there we're going to continue with our front post double and half double crochet, making our way all the way down until we reach our next stitch marker. So I'm just going to do the next set of stitches with you guys really quickly. So finding that next available half double crochet from our previous row, yarn over once, insert your hook into that next stitch, pull through 2, pull through 2, yarn over once, preparing for a half double crochet, skip 1 stitch from our previous row, and then half double crochet into the next. And that's it. We're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down until we reach our next stitch marker. And then I'll meet you back right after a front post double crochet just so we can increase together once more. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way across with my front post double crochet and half double crochets again. And now that we're at our following stitch marker, we're going to do another increase. So this is going to be a repeat of the first one, so let's just get this started. So we should have all ended on a front post double crochet, and we should have 2 available stitches right before a stitch marker stitch. But remembering that first stitch that we have counts as this front post double crochet. So into that following stitch, or that stitch that's right before a stitch marker stitch, we're going to do a half double crochet, a front post double, and then another half double crochet. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that following stitch with a half double, into the body of that stitch with a front post double, And then into that same stitch as the last half double crochet, one more half double crochet. And that is our increase, and our middle stitch is always going to be a front post double crochet. So go ahead and take out that stitch marker. Into that following stitch, we're going to do our front post double and make sure that we are inserting our stitch marker back into that stitch. And now that we're on the other side of our corner stitch, we're going to do another increase. So really quickly, we're going to yarn over, skip one stitch from our previous row because this stitch counts as this middle stitch that we just did. And then we're going to insert into there with one half double into that same stitch, a front post double, and then a half double into the top of that same stitch. And then from here, just into that following stitch, a front post double crochet, skip one stitch from our previous row, and then a half double crochet into that following stitch. And we're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down. Once we reach our last stitch marker right here, go ahead and do the first increase and then our middle stitch, and then I'll show you guys how we're going to do the increase on the other side and then connect this row. Alright, so I am back. I have made my way all the way down with my front post double crochets and half double crochets. I did the increase that I had right here, right before my stitch marker stitch, and then I did my corner stitch, which is always a front post double crochet. Now from here, we should have one extra stitch right after our corner stitch, and we're going to need to do another increase over here as well. So just as a refresher, we're going to yarn over, skip one stitch from our previous row, and then into that following stitch, you're going to half double into the body of that same stitch, a front post double, and then a half double crochet into the top of that same stitch. And now that the other side of our increase is all finished up, we're going to need to slip stitch it into that second chain that we made when we started off this row. So count up 1, count up 2, insert your hook into that second chain with a slip stitch, and now our row 1 is all finished up. Now this is what our work should be looking like after we have just finished our first 2 rows, and from here it's just going to be a repeat of our second row, but it's just going to continue to expand until we get the collar width that we like. So I'm just going to get the following row started off with you guys, do the increase with you guys just as a quick refresher, and I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. So right after our slip stitch, we're going to chain 2, and making sure that we're working in the same direction, we're going to start with a front post double crochet. Now for this portion we want ribbing, so we're going to find the first front post double crochet from our previous row, and then do a front post double crochet into there. So yarn over, insert your hook underneath that front post double crochet, and there goes our first front post, and then we're going to half double crochet into the tops of our half double crochet stitches from our previous row as well. So yarn over, making sure that we are still skipping one stitch because this front post double crochet counts as this stitch, and then half double crochet into the top of that stitch. And that's it. Continue to put one front post double crochet and half double crochet into every stitch, and I will meet you guys back when we're ready to do our increase along this side right after we finish our last front post double crochet. Alright, so we are back with our front post double crochets and half double crochets. We should have just one stitch left, and then we're going to do our increase. It's going to be the same increase as our previous row, so let's just blaze right through this. We should have 2 stitches left right before our stitch marker stitch. So we're going to yarn over, skip one stitch from our previous row, and then into that following stitch, which should be the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. Go ahead and insert your hook into there with a half double, and then into the body of that same stitch, which is going to be a half double crochet, a front post double, and then into the top of that same stitch, a half double. Now that we have that, we have our corner stitch to work into. So take out our stitch marker, do our front post double crochet into there, and then insert your stitch marker back into the top of that stitch. And then just to get the next increase with you guys done, skip one stitch from our previous row, and then into the stitch right after that, a half double, front post double, and then another half double. So yarn over, into that following stitch, half double, into the top of that same stitch, which is a half double crochet, a front post double, and then into the top of that same stitch, a half double crochet. And then that is it. It's going to be the same way, making our way all the way around. So go ahead and get this portion all finished up. And then once we reach our last stitch marker, go ahead and do the increase, the corner stitch, and then I'll meet you guys back because we should have just a handful of stitches left. So I have just made my way all the way around with my third row. I just inserted my stitch marker stitch into this corner stitch that I have right here, and we have just a handful of stitches left over before we end this row, so I just wanted to show you guys how we're going to do that and let you guys do the rest on your own. So right after our corner stitch is finished, we're going to do another increase along the other side, so the same thing that we've been doing whenever we get to our corner stitch. So just as a refresher, we're going to yarn over, skip one stitch from our previous row, and then into that following stitch, a half double crochet, a front post double crochet, and then another half double crochet into the top of that same stitch. And now that we have this increase all finished up, we have 2 stitches left. So we do still need to extend our ribbing. So into that following stitch, we're going to do our front post double crochet, and then we should have just 1 stitch left over right after that. So we're going to skip the following stitch, and then into that last stitch, insert your hook into there with a half double crochet. And then just to close off our row 3, count up the 2 chains that we made when we started off this row, slip stitch into that second chain, and now this row is all closed off. And this is what 3 of our collar rows should be looking like. And all we're going to do from here is just continue to do the rows of our front post double crochets and our half double crochets while maintaining the same increases and making sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into the corner stitches until we get the total collar width that we like. If you guys want to leave it like this, that's completely fine, or if you guys want to make it super thick, completely up to you guys. But go ahead and get this portion all finished up. Do a chain up of 1 and cut once we have the collar width that we want, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can get started on the body. Alright, so I am back and I've just finished up my collar. Now I did a total of 7 rows and this width is just about 2.5 inches or 7 centimeters. Now from here, just to clean up the edge, we're going to do a single crochet row with our primary color. So we're going to start by inserting our hook into any one of our stitches. It doesn't quite matter which one, but I'm just going to insert mine into a stitch that's nearest to my stitch marker because we're going to be doing an increase into there. So once our hook is in through our stitch, we're going to pull through and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our first stitch marker. And now that we're at our stitch marker stitch, all we're going to do is take our stitch marker out for now, and then do an increase of 3 into that stitch. So there is 1, into that same stitch, there's 2, and then into that same stitch just once more, there is 3. Now we are going to be inserting our stitch marker into that middle stitch so that we know where the corner is, and then that's it. From here, we're going to continue to put 1 single crochet into every stitch while maintaining an increase of 3 single crochets into that stitch marker stitch and then inserting our stitch marker into the middle. Once we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space and then do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we can get started on the front panel. Alright, so I am back and I've just finished up my single crochet row along the edge of my collar. Alright, so I'm back and I've just finished up my single crochet row along the edge of my collar with my primary color. Now I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now that we have this all finished up, we can set this off to the side because we're going to get started on our shoulder portion next. So getting the shoulder portion for the front panel is going to be pretty simple since it's going to be done in a rectangle. So we're going to start by making a slip knot with our primary color, grab our 6mm hook, and we're going to start by making a chain from the top of our shoulder down to where we want the bottom of this sweater to be, keeping in mind that we will have a bottom band as well. Now I've already measured mine out. I need a total of 20 inches or 51 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 75, but since I already have my shoulder portion all finished up, I'm just going to make a little swatch with you guys. So go ahead and get your chain all finished up. So now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain, and we want the height for our following row. And all we're going to do is yarn over once, preparing for a herringbone double crochet. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert our hook into there. Once we have that, we're going to yarn over, pull through that first loop. Now once we have 3 loops on our hook, we're going to pull that first loop underneath that second loop. So we're just going to hook that first loop, pull it underneath the second to get a total of 2 loops on our hook. And then from here, we're going to yarn over, pull through just the first loop, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops. Now that is our herringbone double crochet. We're going to continue to do this, making our way all the way down our chain. So let's do the next one. Starting with the yarn over again, we're going to insert our hook into the following chain, yarn over, and pull through. Once we have those 3 loops on our hook, pull the first loop underneath the second loop, and then we're going to get 2 loops on our hook again. So from there, yarn over, pull through the first, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Let's just do one more a little bit quicker. So yarn over, into the next chain, pull through. Pull that first loop underneath your second, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. And continue to put 1 herringbone double crochet into every chain. And now that we've made our way all the way down our chain with our herringbone double crochet, our following rows are going to be more herringbone double crochets. So I'm just going to get the next row started off with you guys. And how that's going to work is by chaining up 2 and flipping our work. Now from here, we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that last stitch from our previous row, pull through. Pull the first loop underneath the second, yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2, and that is it. Continue to put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way down. We reach the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then repeat. We're not going to be doing any increases or decreases, and we're going to continue the shoulder portion until it can reach 2 inches past the tip of our shoulder while placing the first row at the corner stitch of our collar. Now this is going to be different for everyone depending on how wide your collar is and how wide you want the fit to be. So when you're putting this up to yourselves, make sure that you're wearing your collar and just measuring it accordingly. But I'm going to get mine done and then I will meet you guys back. So I am back with the shoulder portion of my front panel. I did a total of 5 rows and this width is just about 2.5 inches or 7 centimeters. And now that we have the shoulder portion, we're going to connect it into the shoulder stitch marker stitch that we have. So just making sure that I am slip stitching it into our shoulder stitch marker stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that stitch. And once we have that, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything. And now our shoulder portion is nice and attached. Now from here, we do need to work our way up to the following row. So making sure that we're working towards the point of the V-neck, we're going to slip stitch into the following 2 stitches. So let's flip our work. So I've just slip stitched into my stitch marker stitch and I need to work my way up to the following row. So I'm going to find that next available stitch that I have into my collar and insert my hook into there with 1 slip stitch, and I need to work my way into the following slip stitch as well because our herringbone stitches are a little bit taller. So insert your hook into that following stitch and flip our work. And now that our work is flipped, we're going to need to do a decrease of 2 herringbone double crochets. So how that's going to work is yarn over, insert your hook into that following stitch from our previous row, pull through, and then from there also insert your hook into that next stitch, pull through. Once we have those 4 loops on our hook, we're going to pull that first loop underneath the second and the third loop. So just pull underneath to get a total of 2 loops on our hook, and then from here yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that is how we do our decrease. And then from here, just continue to put 1 herringbone stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 so that we can decrease together just once more. Alright, so now that I've made my herringbone stitch all the way back up, I have left the last 2 stitches, so we're just going to decrease together once more. So from here, all we're going to do is yarn over, start by inserting your hook into that second to last stitch, pull through, insert your hook into that last stitch, pull through. When we have those 4 loops on our hook, we're going to pull that first loop underneath that second and third loop. And from here, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Now once we've just done our decrease, we're going to need to slip stitch it into the base. So how we're going to do that is we're going to count up 1, 2 stitches into the base. Into that second stitch, we're going to slip stitch into there to close off this row. And that's it. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we reach our middle stitch marker stitch. But since we're here, I'm just going to get started on the following row with you guys. So what we're going to need to do, just like how we started our previous row, slip stitch up the 2 next available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2, and then flip our work. And then just to do the decrease once more, yarn over, into the last stitch from our previous row, pull through, into the following stitch from our previous row, pull through, pull that first loop underneath our second and third loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. And from there, put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch. And just continue to repeat these 2 rows, making our way all the way down until we reach our middle stitch marker stitch. Our last row should be worked into that stitch, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can get started on the increase side of our front panel. Alright, so I am back and I have made my way all the way down until I have reached my middle stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we did on this side over here, but instead of doing decreases into every row, we're going to be doing increases. So since I ended along the bottom, I'm going to chain 2, flip my work, and then do my herringbone double crochet, making my way all the way up until I have just 1 stitch left. And then I will meet you guys back when we have 1 stitch left so that we can do our increase. So the increases for this are going to be pretty simple. Just into that last stitch, we're going to be doing 2 herringbone double crochets into that same stitch. So insert your hook into that last stitch with 1 herringbone, and then into that same last stitch with a second herringbone stitch. And that is our increase. And we're going to be connecting it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. So find that next available stitch, we're going to count up 1, and then count up 2. Into that second stitch, go ahead and insert your hook into there with a slip stitch, and now this row is nice and connected. And since we're here, I'm just going to get started on the following row with you guys, and then it's just going to be a repeat of these 2 rows. So start by slip stitching up the next 2 available stitches. So here is 1, here is the second one, and then flip our work. And now that our work is flipped, all we're going to do is do an increase of 2 into that stitch that's nearest to the base. So just to do that together, we're going to yarn over into the first stitch from our previous row, insert with your first herringbone double crochet, and then 1 more herringbone double crochet into that same stitch. And then that's it. From here, just put 1 into every stitch, and then we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows, making our way all the way up until we reach our shoulder stitch marker. Once we do, I'll meet you guys back so that we can do the shoulder portion together. Alright, so I am back and I've just made my way all the way up to my stitch marker stitch with all my increase rows. And now from here, all we're going to do is do another shoulder portion for the same amount of rows that we started this whole piece off with. So from this point, it doesn't matter if you're along the top or along the bottom, all you're going to do is chain 2 and then do your herringbone double crochets, making your way all the way up. Once we're at the end of the row, chain 2, flip your work, and then repeat that all the way down with no increases and no decreases. So since I started off my shoulder portion on the other side with 5 rows, I made an additional 5 rows right here. And once you have this shoulder portion all finished up, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we can get started on the back. So now that the entirety of our front panel is all finished, we can get started with the back panel. So that's going to start off the same way that we did the front. Start by making the same chain that we made when we started off our shoulder. So for me that was 75. And then we're going to do 5 rows of herringbone double crochets with no increases. And then I'm going to do 5 rows of herringbone double crochets with no increases and no decreases, because that is the same amount of rows that I have for my shoulder portion over here. If you have more rows, just do the same amount of rows that you guys have. And then once we have that, I'll meet you guys back just to show you guys where we're going to be inserting our hook and to remind you how we're going to connect it into the base. But it's going to be done pretty much the same way as the front panel, just without the increases or decreases. All right, so now that we have our shoulder portion for the back panel all finished up, we're going to need to connect it into the base. So how that's going to work, it's going to be connected the same exact way as the front panel. So start by inserting your hook into that corner stitch that we have our stitch marker into. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And now everything is nice and attached. And just to get started on the first row together, we're just going to be slip stitching up the following 2 stitches to work our way up to the following row, flip our work, and then put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch. And from there on out, continue to do herringbone double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases, connecting it the same exact way we have connected the front panel to the base, making our way all the way down to our following stitch marker stitch. From there, it's going to be the same shoulder portion, so it doesn't matter if you end along the top or the bottom, just chain 2, flip your work, and then put 1 herringbone stitch into every stitch for the same amount of rows as our shoulder portion. Once we have that all finished up, do a chain up, 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. All right, so I am back. Both my front and my back panel are all finished, and now what we're going to do is seam everything together. So we're going to start by seaming our shoulders, so let's first make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. So now that our work is flipped wrong side out, the next thing we're going to do is insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, and then we can get started with our seam. So we're all going to start by inserting our yarn onto our hook, yarn over, pull through to secure, and now we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side row that we have, so let's get that started. Into the front panel that we have right over here, we're going to find that first side row, and then insert your hook into that top loop. Find that same first side row within the back panel. This is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop, and then all I'm going to do is single crochet both panels together. There's our first, and like I said, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets into every side row, so let's do that one more time. Into the same side row within the front panel, and then also into the same side row within the back panel, insert your hook, and then we're going to single crochet them together, and that's it. We're just going to continue to put 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way down until we reach our collar. And when we don't have any more side rows left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. All right, so now that our shoulders are all seamed up, the next thing we're going to seam is our sides. So first things first, we're going to want to insert our stitch marker into an even numbered stitch from the top, right where we want our sleeve to be. So since this is going to be a balloon sleeve, I inserted my stitch marker about mid-chest. So I inserted my stitch marker into the 28th stitch, or this is just about 10 inches or 25 centimeters. And now from here we can get started on our seam, but just make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Now the seam is going to be pretty similar to our shoulder. We're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, making sure we're working into both the front and back panel at the same time. So let's do the first few. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through everything, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, we're going to find that first available stitch into the front panel and insert your hook. We're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, and then single crochet them together. And that's it. Let's do just one more. Find that next stitch into the front panel and insert your hook into there. Find the next stitch into the back panel, insert your hook into there, and then single. And from here, continue to do this until we reach our stitch marker, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Once we have that, go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the length of our sleeve. Alright, so now that everything is all seamed up, we can get started on the length of our sleeve. So first things first, now we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're going to be inserting, still using our 6mm hook, into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Next thing we're going to do is insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then from here we're going to make a chain the length that we would like our sleeve to be, keeping in mind that we will have a cuff as well. So I'd like for my sleeve to be just about 15 inches or 40 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 50. Alright, so now that we have our chain, we're going to do a herringbone stitch row all the way back. So since we already know how to do this, I'm just going to do the first one with you guys. So start by blocking off that last chain, do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, insert with a herringbone double crochet. And then once we have that, make our way all the way down, putting one herringbone double crochet stitch into every chain, and then I will meet you back so we can connect it into the base, even though it is the same way that we are connecting it into the base for the front and back panel. Alright, so I'm back and I've just made my way all the way down with my herringbone stitches. I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to connect it into the base, and it's going to be connected the same exact way that we did the front and back panel. So we're just going to do this really quickly as a refresher. So we're going to start by finding the next 2 available stitches into the base. So here's 1, and here's 2. Into that second stitch, we're going to insert our hook with a slip stitch just to close off this first row, and then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch up the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and then there's 2. And from there, all we're going to do is flip our work, and then put 1 herringbone double crochet into every stitch. And we're just going to continue with those rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base. Once we don't, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam our sleeve together. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way around my armhole with my sleeve. I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam our sleeve together. And this is going to be the same seam that we did for the sides. So first things first, make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Now since we already know how to do the seam, we're just going to do the first one together. But we're going to start by inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. And then we're going to pull our yarn through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. And the single crochet seam is pretty simple. Start by finding that first stitch from our front panel, and then find that next stitch from our back panel, and then just single crochet them together. And then that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that we've just finished up seaming up our sleeve, we're ready to get started on our cuff. So first things first, make sure that our work is flipped right side out. Next, we're going to insert our 6mm hook into any one of the side rows along the bottom of our sleeve. Insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And all we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side row. So let's just do the first few. It's pretty simple. Start by finding that first side row and put 1 single crochet into there. Next, we're going to find our next side row, insert your hook into that top loop with another single crochet, and then that's it. We're just going to continue to put 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up of 1 and cut, since we will be switching out our colors, and then I will meet you back. So now that our first single crochet row with our primary color is all finished up, we're going to be doing 1 more single crochet row with our secondary color now, just so it can be nice and clean. So to start by inserting your hook into any one of the stitches that we have along the bottom of our sleeve, insert your secondary color yarn onto your hook, pull through, chain 1 to secure, and then just make your way all the way around, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Slip stitch into that chain space, and then I will meet you back so we can get started on the length of our cuff. So now that our single crochet row with our secondary color is all finished, we're now going to make a chain the length that we want our cuff to be. So I'd like for my cuff to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 10. So now that our chain is all finished up, we're going to be doing a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain, and then do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to do a slip stitch. So bring our hook down into that second chain. Once when it's in there, we should have 2 loops on our hook, so we're just going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops, and making sure that we're not accidentally tugging too tightly on our working yarn after we finish every stitch, otherwise the following rows can be a little too tight to work into. So into that following chain, pull through everything, move on to the next one, following chain, and pull through. Continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now that we've made our way all the way down our chain with our slip stitches, we now need to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is find that next available stitch that we have into the base, then slip stitch into there to close off this first slip stitch row. Now right after that, we have another stitch to work into to work our way up to the following row. So into that next stitch into the base, insert your hook with a slip stitch and flip our work. And now, so we can get some really stretchy and pretty ribbon, we're going to be doing back loop slip stitches. So we're going to start by finding the last stitch from our previous row, insert your hook in through that back loop, yarn over, and then gently pull through everything. Let's do that again. Into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And that's it. Continue to do this until you reach the end of the row. And now that we're at the end of our row 2, just to work our way back, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And I'll meet you back so we can connect it into the base just once more. And now that we're at the bottom of our row 3, we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So start by finding that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch. And then just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch, flip our work, and then continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base. And then I will meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. Alright, so we've just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to seam it. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're first going to want to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Now once we have that, we're going to yarn over, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And then from here, we're going to find that first available stitch within the front panel, and then insert our hook only into that front loop or the loop that's nearest to us. And then we're going to find that first available stitch into the back panel. This is mine right here, and then insert your hook only into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. And now that our hook is in through both, we should have 3 loops on our hook. So we're just going to yarn over and pull through everything. And this is so that the seam looks like an extra slip stitch row. Let's do the next one. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. And then into the next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. And when we have those 3 loops, yarn over and pull through everything. And then that's it. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. Alright, so now that both of our sleeves are all finished up, the last thing we're going to do together is our bottom band. And that's actually going to be done exactly the same way as our cuff, just a little bit bigger. So let's get this started. First things first, let's make sure the work is flipped right side out. And then we're going to be inserting our 6mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece. We're next going to be doing a single crochet row with no increases and no decreases, so let's just get the first one started. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and just put 1 single crochet into every side row, so let's just do the first 2. This is my first side row right here. I'm going to insert my hook into there with 1 single crochet, and then into my following side row with another single crochet. And that's it. Continue to do this, making our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut so that we can switch out our colors. Alright, so now that our single crochet row with our primary color is all finished, just like how we did the cuff, we're going to have to do another single crochet row but with our secondary color. So all we're going to do is reinsert our 6mm hook into any one of our stitches along the bottom, do a single crochet row, just putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you guys back just to talk you guys through how we're going to do the length of our bottom band. So now that we have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row with our secondary color, from here we're just going to make a chain the length that we want our bottom band to be. Now I would like for my bottom band to be just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 15. And now that we have our chain, we're going to be doing a slip stitch row all the way down. So just block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, and that's it. Continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Once we reach the base, we're going to slip stitch it into that next stitch that we have available to close off our row 1. And then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch, flip our work, and then just do rows of back loop slip stitches. And we're just going to continue with our back loop slip stitch rows, making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we did for the cuff, making our way all the way around with no increases and no decreases. And I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left, just so I can remind you how we're going to do our seam. Alright, so we've just made our way all the way around with our bottom band. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to seam it up together. And this is going to be the same seam that we did for the cuff, so since we already know how to do that, we're just going to do the first one together. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out. And then within the front panel, we're going to find that first available stitch and then insert our hook into that front loop. And then within the back panel, we're going to find that first available stitch and insert your hook into that back loop. Once we're at those 3 loops, just yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's it. Continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now that our bottom band is all seamed up, we are all done. And the last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoy the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!